Peach Pundit, the podcast, is a conversation filled with the personal opinions of the people who are participating. Any view or opinion expressed belongs only to the person who expressed it and not with anyone with whom that person is professionally affiliated. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another Peach Pundit, the podcast. My name is Scott Turner, and we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. Normally, when Jason Pye is here, he runs point, but he is here this week, and we're also joined by, again, the effervescent, wonderful human being that is Buzz Brockway.
Yo.
But last night, I sat up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I could not get to sleep. I literally could not sleep because of the topic that we're going to tackle this week. And it was because I could not sleep that I'm asking my co-host here tonight to allow me the opportunity to run point on this podcast because I have a lot on my mind. It is weighing on me. It is causing me physical pain. And the topic is general stupidity.
Could we say that there's a hurricane raging through your brain? Is that a fair description of?
So poetic. You're so poetic.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, it is actually causing me pain to see people who I love and respect, who I've had friendships for a long time, become consumed with misinformation and disinformation. And we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk about why we are where we are, how we got here, some examples around it, and maybe try to chart a course. I mean, first impressions, I'll go to Jason first.
I mean, look, man, this I think this topic is generally long overdue for us to discuss because we have seen this stuff has been going on for a long time, and conspiracy theories and things like that have always been there, but it's getting worse. And I think the pandemic made a lot of it worse. Because it used to be we would laugh this stuff off when it was like 9/11 conspiracy theories. Those things lived in sort of random internet forums, and they were on the fringes of different political movements. People did take time and effort to debunk them, and bless them for doing so. But this stuff has gotten a lot worse. Then it moved into Barack Obama's birth certificate. Then it moved into whether Obama was. I remember my mom telling me Obama was going to run for a third term, and that the limitations in the Constitution didn't matter because Obama doesn't care about the Constitution. And I was just like, you got to stop reading like conservativetreehouse.blogspot.us and or whatever.
Buzz, what about you? I mean, are you excited about this topic?
Not
are you looking
really.
forward to it?
I mean, I'm not excited about it. I mean, I told my wife just a few minutes ago, I said, honey, we got to do our podcast and we have to talk about this stupidest thing ever. And she said, you have to? I said, yeah, we have to because
it's happening.
It's having real consequences in the sense that how many North Carolina elected officials have we seen? Another one did it yesterday, a congressman, right, who had to say, please stop calling our office, clogging up our phones with this stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not just the ability to control hurricanes, which we'll talk about. It's all of the stuff that, that is people who couldn't point to the Appalachian part of North Carolina on a map who are telling us what's going on there, and they have no clue. So,
with that, we've set the stage. We're going to have a really good conversation. Hopefully, we can find something productive in it. But before we get there, let me tell you about our friends at Americans for Prosperity, who have honored Georgia lawmakers with their Pioneers for Prosperity Awards. The awards honor distinguished lawmakers who were policy champions during the 118th Congress. These leaders are on the front lines in Congress advancing principles and policies that advance the conservative movement while proactively opposing harmful ideas that grow the size of government and take money out of taxpayers' paychecks. The pioneers of prosperity stood firm against ill-advised legislation that would have deepened the hardships felt by working families and worked closely with AFP in Washington, as well as with the grassroots communities in their home states. They have been awarded to U.S. Congressman Buddy Carter, Rich McCormick, Barry Loudermilk, and Rick Allen. Each of those gentlemen have served with distinction. We appreciate their contributions to our state and our country. And thank you to Americans for Prosperity for being a partner-level Patreon. If you too would like to be a Patreon to the podcast, just head on over to patreon.com/peachpundit. Sign up for one of our tiers today. So, gentlemen, we each know the former editor-in-chief of Peach Pundit, Charlie Harper. And Charlie is what I like to refer to as a pudding stick. And I admire that quality about Charlie quite a bit. You know, the colloquial definition of pudding stick is the stick that you use to stir up the crap in the bottom of an outhouse to keep it from clumping up and making sure it's decomposing. That's what a pudding stick is for those of you who didn't grow up in the country or never used an outhouse. But he posted this thing on Facebook that I think is brilliant. And so hat tip to Charlie Harper for this gem. It says, everything is conspiracy theory when you don't understand how anything works. And this week, we were treated to yet another example of the stupid things Marjorie Taylor Greene does when she tweeted out, I'm going to read this word for word, that, so I make sure I get it right, a series of tweets about how they can control the weather. She doesn't just say who they are, and I'm reading directly from her Twitter at this point. Yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. There are a slew of community notes added to that. Jason, am I overreacting when I say it's a problem when a sitting member of Congress says that they control the weather and doesn't even put context around who she's talking about when she says they?
No, you're not overreacting. The problem with it is first of all, you know, whether we like it or not, Marjorie Taylor Greene has agency. She is a sitting member of Congress. I don't think she deserves to be there, but the people of the 14th District of Georgia disagree with me. She is knowingly spreading false information. She has to know it's false. She's resting on a 2009, she's tweeted out like a 2009 video with some scientists who talked about how the weather, they're developing capability to control the weather. But let's keep in mind here, the average hurricane produces 1.5 trillion kilowatts of energy. That is a quarter of the energy in the United States. Like, that's on an annual basis. That was the consumption in 2022. The consumption in 2022 was 4 trillion kilowatt hours. So why aren't we harnessing that energy, providing free electricity to everyone? We just need 4 hurricanes to come through, average hurricanes at that. And,
right.
You know, I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. And you know, you said it in the agenda you sent around, you know, we are living in idiocracy. You know, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the movie, you know, it came out, 20 years ago or so. It's a guy who, I forget all the details. It's been a long time since I've seen it. He wakes
He's a
up
librarian in the army.
I just rewatched it actually.
Yeah.
The other night when I walked
We
in
need
the
to have a Peach
hotel
Pundit
room,
screening of this
yes.
right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, he wakes up 500 years in the future. Society has gotten like stupid, like dumb. He takes an IQ test and is the smartest man alive, and his IQ is like average at best.
Right.
But he's still the smartest man alive, and he's like, they require him to solve the water crisis that faces the planet, and it's and there's so many parallels in that movie. God, I hate it, to the times in which we live, and people have been saying it for 10, 15 years, since that movie came out. Oh, we're living in an idiocracy. Nah, we really are now. And she complains about how Laura Loomer is hurting the Republican brand. Dude, read your own tweets.
Yeah. So
Laura Loomer had a similar conspiracy when there was going to be a big snowstorm in front of the Iowa caucus. She claimed that Nikki Haley had something to do with that.
Yeah. So Idiocracy is a movie that was created in 2006 by Mike Judge.
The great Mike Judge, yes.
And it didn't get widespread release. It tested poorly in front of test audiences, and corporations hated it because it slays corporations. Absolutely attacks corporations. But the people the President of the United States is a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
And we live in a time when The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, has seriously considered running for president. Our former president of the United States has actually gone into a professional wrestling ring and smacked McMahon, the guy who owns WWE, or used to until recently, smacked him.
Hulk Hogan gave the speech at the RNC and ripped off his
Hulk Hogan ripped off his shirt at an RNC convention where they were nominating the president of the United States, the candidate to be president of the United States for the Republican Party. You're right, Jason. We are living in it. Buzz, you always see things through the glass is half full. Pull me out of this funk. I feel like Artax in the sea of despair. Like I'm just sinking. Help me out here. Are we living in Idiocracy?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, stop! Damn it! Damn it!
Look, if Buzz Brockway is pessimistic about the situation, we are indeed fucked.
Oh, we are so screwed.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, but I think to me, this is the culmination of trends that have been going on for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. The hollowing out of institutions. Jason, you mentioned COVID. I think COVID accelerated that, the distrust in institutions. And now we're to the point, I think what we're seeing is this is the inevitable end of this lack of trust in institutions, where people just make up crap. And I'll point out, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as a member of Congress, if she really believes that the government is or they are controlling the weather, she can write letters, she can go ask questions, she could march over to the Pentagon tomorrow and demand to see the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and sit down and demand and not rest until she got to the bottom of this. But she has not done that.
She's not smart enough to.
She has rushed to Twitter to toss out half-baked ideas. And so that's part of the problem, is that she doesn't understand what her job is and what her role is.
No.
What you're supposed to do as a member of Congress, one of your jobs is you got to represent your constituents. You got to provide constituent services. Also, if you see a problem, you take the power that you have and you go do something about it. I don't see any evidence that she ever does that. And instead, what she's doing here is pouring fuel on the fire of an already powder keg situation. She's just dumping more fuel onto that, and it's getting worse.
She's on the oversight committee, for God's sakes. Like, every member of Congress can write a letter to any of the agencies, demand answers for something, and but she's on the oversight committee.
This is the Congress that held a hearing on UFOs.
Yeah.
So this group is not afraid to go tackle weird subjects. So why not Jewish space lasers? Let's get to the bottom of this thing.
And that's who she meant when she said they, right? I was asked yesterday, who do you think she meant?
I'm not inclined to give her any benefit of the doubt. I mean, like, it's this reminds me of that skit, the Celebrity Jeopardy skit, but it was a skit on Saturday Night Live where Tom Hanks played like a redneck, and they said, like, does your vote count? Or talking about an election, he goes, well, they already decided the winner of the next election. He didn't say who they was. It wasn't.
And the African Americans on the panel agreed with him. And
yeah, right. But like Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's just, she's promoted 9/11 conspiracy theories. She's talked about Jewish space lasers. She's talked about all sorts of things that have been not just I think that's not true, demonstrably proven false.
Well, and she tweeted today we get your reaction to her tweet from today, both of you. We'll start with Buzz. So when I'm done reading, because I can't even bother, man. So just jump in, Buzz. Everyone keeps asking, who is they? Well, some of them are listed on NOAA, as well as most of the ways weather can be modified, because they are required to report it to the Secretary of Commerce by the Weather Modification Act of 1972. The NOAA government website has a library catalog of 1,026 entries of weather modifications, but that's not all of them. If your home or business or property is damaged or a loved one is killed by their weather modifications, shouldn't you be eligible for compensation? After all, did they ask you if you agreed to our weather being modified?
Is she a lawyer? Is she become an ambulance chaser? I mean, that's my, she's,
you too can be given a cash settlement if you call this 800 number.
Oh, yeah. I mean, oh, good grief. I think, I don't know, maybe this is a good time to talk about how James Pethokoukis wrote an article today detailing that, it's actually a huge failure that we can't control the weather. It would come in handy right now. And he's a guy who promotes technology advances and says that America should be committed to what he calls upwing technologies that lift up people. And so the fact that people are writing those kinds of articles to say, we can't control the weather.
How much money could you make if you could, though?
Oh,
I mean, if you're a capitalist.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, if you are a capitalist who is bound by this NOAA Weather Modification Act of 1972, wouldn't you want to be making money off of your...
It speaks to, does she intend to drop a piece of legislation providing compensation for those people? And of course not. Of course not.
No, she
just wants to complain about it.
Yeah.
Pi, let me note real fast. So I asked ChatGPT, which is becoming my go-to when I have a quick question that I don't feel like researching. I asked ChatGPT how much money NOAA receives on an annual basis, and they say it typically receives around $5 to $7 billion in funding each year. Now, I want you to think about that. According to the accounting that from the CBO for the entirety of fiscal year 2024, the Department of Defense received approximately $900 billion. We can't even kill properly anymore as a government. We fight wars kind of half-assed these days, and which is why we were in Afghanistan for 20 years. Is why we were in Iraq for another 18 years. And NOAA is supposed to develop this sort of technology on $5 to $7 billion a year when when the funding it gets supports a wide range of programs, including weather forecasting, ocean and atmospheric research, fisheries management, and climate monitoring. And I've seen people say that, kind of repeat this too. Please use what little of a brain you have left. If this does not take a ton of research, you can go and simple Google, ask ChatGPT. This shouldn't be the fact that we have to spend an episode on this, talking about this, is really depressing.
It is, but I'm feeling it a little bit of cathartic relief. To be honest, maybe I'll be able to sleep tonight. I don't know. But you're right. There's no grounding. It reminds me of people who believe the Earth is flat. I've written about my experience with the flat Earth taxi driver when my car broke down and I was in the legislature, and the guy saw me in a suit. He saw where we were going, and he's like, "Do you work at the Capitol?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a state rep." "Oh, I got to talk to you about chemtrails, the Illuminati, and the Earth is flat." And it took a 2 hours 15 minutes to get from Woodstock, Georgia, where I was located, to the Capitol that day because traffic was really bad. And I decided to engage with the guy. And he had an answer for every one of my statements, except for one, which was, if you drive on a straight line long enough, will you get back to where you are right now? And he was like, no. He goes, but you can do that anyway. And I was like, why not? Because I can't drive across water. Okay. But if you got in a boat and you kept going and then on a straight line, would you get back to where we are right now? In any direction, pick a direction, just go straight. And he was like, no, because you'll hit a 50 mile high wall of ice, which no human can get over. And I was like, what about airplanes? And he's like, it's 50 miles. Airplane flies over 50 miles high. Okay. So he had something for every argument that I gave him. But I learned in that moment that there is nothing I can say to them. And this is what kept me up all night. There's nothing I can say to them to bring them back from that. There's no words, there's no argument, there's no evidence I can present them. They're so deeply ingrained. And this is why it's causing me worry. So many people jump to Marjorie Taylor Greene's defense. For example, there's a lady who I really admire. I'm not going to name her here. I don't want to embarrass her because I still love her. But she picked it up and tweeted out the story from 9 years ago about the lasers seeding clouds, which takes 1 trillion watts to do, by the way. It's an extraordinary amount. Like, we would know if that's happening on the planet. We would know. And somehow she's bought into it, and it hurts my heart to see somebody like that, who I care about, buy into this, and knowing that if I went to her, there's nothing I could say. I would be the asshole. Are we the assholes here, Pi?
I mean, no, we're not the assholes here. I mean, I'm looking at the tweet, and I mean, we're not the assholes. And I was watching a video yesterday, come across one on Instagram, where this guy went to a Trump rally and he was asking people if the earth was flat. Well, the first person was just like, yes. The second person just was shaking his head, and he goes, I don't know, but I know the moon landing was fake. And then the third person's like, oh yeah, hell yeah, the earth is flat. And then the last person was like, well, the Bible says there's a firmament over the earth, and that the Bible says the earth is flat because of the firmament over the earth. And I'm just, we've moved past the fringes where, I mean, look at it's not just this. I posted something on Facebook on last week after the podcast, and my migraine, with the reason I didn't appear on the podcast last week is because I had a horrible migraine. Laid down for a couple of hours, put my massaging sleep mask on, and knocked it out pretty quickly. But I was reading some of the stuff about the money FEMA gets, and they're giving it all to migrants. No, that money is appropriated to CBP. FEMA merely administers the program. It's a separate pot of funding. And FEMA gets disaster relief funding from Congress. It got $20.2 billion last year. It's going to get $20.2 billion, at least that's the allocation, through the CR. The difference is it got $15.5 billion in emergency disaster relief that Congress didn't re-up when it passed the CR in last month. And this stuff can be, and I realize it's Congress. I realize that people don't know how the government works or how appropriations work. I understand, but this stuff isn't hard to read about and to do a simple Google about. But we don't read past headlines or the first couple paragraphs of a story, or we go to sources that confirm our biases.
Buzz, are we the jerk?
We're the guys, to use the metaphor, we're the guys shouting into the hurricane. That's what we are. I think something to note about the person that Marjorie Taylor Greene and your friend, our friend, my friend too, tweeted out. He's a futurist. He's a physicist. He's a very smart guy, but he's what they call a futurist or futurologist. He tries to predict and project things 20, 30, 50 years from now. And so when he goes on shows like that, he's trying to popularize science. He's trying to say this is what could be done in the future. And if you listen to what he was saying carefully, that's what he was saying. We could be able to do this. We might be able to do this. We should be able to do this. And here's all the reasons why we would want to. That doesn't mean that it's technologically capable right now. Futurist makes all sorts of predictions. There's a whole process. There's a science to it. They're not just spitting in the wind. They're making educated guesses. But many of these predictions don't come true, which gets back to the Pethokoukis article. We cannot do this now. And maybe if we were committed to technology in this country like we claim to be, we could be able to, and there could be some benefits to that. But it's also, I mean, this sort of thing, the sinister aspect of what Green, and I'm sure we'll get to Candace Taylor as well. Well, the reason she's bringing this up now is it's part of an election stealing conspiracy. It's attempting to attribute to the forces who are arrayed against Trump the power to hurl a hurricane at MAGA country, and that's explicitly what Candace Taylor is talking about with Hurricane Milton, which in a few hours of our taping here is going to be pounding Tampa Bay and wreaking havoc on Central and South Florida. And, God help those folks. This was a nasty one. They're trying to lay the case that if Trump loses Georgia and North Carolina and Florida, that it was this hurricane, and now you've got the next 4 years of conspiracy theories that it was the weather controlling people under the direction of Kamala Harris who instructed this to happen. And that's even crazier than Hugo Chavez from beyond the grave stealing the 2020 election, or that stupid those two Italian dudes who were in jail who supposedly had all the servers. And I mean, when is it going to end? And so that's what they're trying to do here. So it's not just spouting off stupid stuff. They think, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Candace Taylor and the others who are pushing this, repeating this, they think that they have uncovered the vote theft of 2024.
Yep.
And that gets to all sorts of things about how these folks have made Donald Trump their god and politics their god, and that the election of a single man can save America and save Christianity and all sorts of other stuff that flow from that. And that's just wrong. And Eric, read some of what Eric Erickson's been talking about for you religious folks. I won't take us down that path, but they've erected idols, and this is in service of their idol.
I mean, you remember at CPAC they had the golden Trump statue that people were going and taking pictures with.
Mhm.
I mean, I couldn't think of a more fitting image. I mean, straight out of the book of Exodus. There are two specific things that, the first is I was listening to a podcast about QAnon, and these guys were not QAnon supporters. It was just talking about like why people believe this, and it's the belief that they are in the know about things that other people aren't. That other people don't know. They have some information that somehow makes them more understanding of the events around them, even as false as that information might be. That's sort of where it goes. And then I remember years ago listening to conservative talk show hosts. I think Sean Hannity was one of them, who complained about low information voters. And I'm sorry, because I truly don't mean to, because there are people I know who I'm sure believe this stuff too. And I don't mean to insult their intelligence. But these people are low information voters, and there's no way of getting around it. When this stuff has now become mainstream, it's been normalized. Conspiracy theories have been normalized. And I think, Buzz, what you said earlier about COVID, and I mentioned it too, about COVID. COVID made us, it's natural for conservatives in particular to have a distrust of government. I understand that. And libertarians too, because there were libertarians who were susceptible to COVID misinformation as well. And the government didn't do themselves any favor.
Right. The logical leap you have to have, though, to say the government isn't capable of solving any of our problems, but they can also control the weather at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
we can't even conduct war right anymore. I mean,
the same government that can't get your mail to you in a timely fashion is controlling the weather. I mean,
so we're gonna get to Candace next, and not just Candace, but we have a lot more to talk about because there's the lithium mines in North Carolina as well. So we'll get to that in a second. But before we do that, Buzz, would you tell us about our Patreon who wants to support the Alzheimer's Association?
Yeah, this is not a conspiracy. This is not misinformation. It is true that Alzheimer's and dementia and other brain memory-related illnesses are a serious problem. And that's why our anonymous supporter of Peach Pundit, the podcast, wants you to go to the Alzheimer's Association of America. That's alz.org, alz.org. Visit their website, read, and you'll see what they do. They do tremendous work helping families, helping people who suffer from dementia and Alzheimer's, supporting research and other wonderful things that need to happen to try to combat this horrible disease and these horrible diseases. So please, on behalf of our anonymous supporter, please go to alz.org and support the Alzheimer's Association of America.
Scott, I have to read a tweet. A tweet. I know you're going to take it back over, but this is from Candace Taylor. I'm going to do a dramatic reading of this tweet.
Is this the weather canon is?
Yes.
Tweet? Yes.
Yes.
Because I have that. I was going to read it. Please do
dramatic reading.
We need to hang on before you do that. If you can do a Candace Taylor impersonation, I want to talk to you because there might be a little money in it for you. Okay. So hit me up, Scot@peachpundit.com. Hit me up. Jason.
Yeah, I can't do it. I would try to hone my best female Cartman voice, but I'm not sure I can pull it off. The weather can and is being manipulated. Wake up. Stop being ignorant or plain stupid. There's no such thing as coincidences. The most important election in the history of America is 30 days away. Pray! Georgia has been compromised and don't know if we'll be able to get all of our early voting days in. Now, a hurricane is coming straight for Florida. These two states are necessary for a Trump victory. No coincidence. God hides lions inside of sheep. I know you're in there somewhere. Make the terrified to cheat?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what it says.
Make the terrified to cheat. This is our nation. This is our nation to lose or ours to keep at real Donald Trump.
I wonder if Donald read it. Okay. All right. So,
well, to that, how long before Trump starts talking about this? I'm surprised it hasn't happened already.
Oh, there's somebody who's got a horsewhip cracking it over him to keep him from saying something. He's going to. Look, it's only a matter of time. But
it is.
I gotta address something in the tweet, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you guys. I had a very serious concern. Obviously, a lot of my work is around elections. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure every eligible Georgian that is legally eligible to vote has the opportunity to do so. And the storm genuinely did scare me for a couple of days about whether or not voting would be impacted, because early voting does start in less than a week here in Georgia. And so I reached out to the Secretary of State's office and I asked them the question. And I spoke with multiple county election supervisors just as a check-in. How are things going? Do you need anything? Is there, and here's the report that came back. There's one county where an election office exterior to the building was damaged, but none of the voting equipment was damaged. There is one polling place in the entire state that will need to be moved because there was damage to that particular polling place. On election day, that polling place will have to be relocated. All other locations at this point in time are online. All the machines have gone through the logic test procedure. They're in the process of that. And this election is scheduled at this point to continue on, minus the rules changes the SEB has made and the litigation around that, which we won't talk a ton about. But all you had to do was make one phone call to debunk your own take that that Georgia voting has been compromised and don't know if and when we'll be able to get all of our early voting days in. The answer to that question is yes. We will be getting all of our early voting days in. And this other storm, Milton, is not on track to come to Georgia. It's going to absolutely devastate Central Florida, but it's not coming here. It's going out into the Atlantic. Now, there's possible it could bend around and come back, depending on who's in control, I guess. Joking. But it was so easy for me to pick up the phone and make one call and talk to somebody, or to talk to a couple of different people. It didn't take me more than 2 hours to figure out if we were in trouble with people being able to vote in this election in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to the question was, if people need assistance, they need to be reaching out. But at this point, there's nothing stopping it. So,
yeah, and I just got to that point. I just pulled up an article from WCNC in Charlotte. The folks who've been really hammered are the folks in Western North Carolina, right? So the North Carolina State Board of Election has passed emergency resolutions. They're being proactive about it, trying to make sure that they provide alternate ways for people in the affected areas to vote. These folks are on it. They're working at it. This is their job. They think about this night and day. They have emergency procedures in place. People can also go to court if they and judges are very willing to step in. We saw it during the pandemic, right? Judges are willing to step in and say, hey, you know what? You need to provide the law. I'm going to pause that law. Let things happen to make sure that people have a right to vote. So we have a system, and it will kick in, and it will help these folks make sure that they have a chance to vote.
Buzz, Josh McCoon wants you to know, though, that Candace Taylor does not speak for the Georgia Republican Party, even though she is a district chairman and serves on the state committee and the executive committee of the Georgia Republican Party.
Well, that's a relief. I'm glad she doesn't.
He has said that in the past when she was caught parroting anti-Semitic language. And obviously, this control the weather thing has its roots in anti-Semitism. It's been a long-running conspiracy that the Jews control the weather. It's born out of a fear of the Jewish people and their culture and how they're different than other cultures. And it is purely designed to make them out to be some sort of group of evil people that need to be extinguished by people like Hitler. And which one of the greatest atrocities in our history, in human history, is the Holocaust. And yet she's not just out there saying that one tweet that Jason read dramatically. She went on to post a lightning storm that happened at night in Florida.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I grew up in Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things was that I slept in a room that had a metal roof. And so I'm very comforted by the sound of thunderstorms. For whatever reason, it's other people don't have this, but when it's really pouring and raining and the lightning I just sleep so well because as a child, I slept in a room with a metal roof and lots of thunder and lightning. She posted this video, and the guy who posted it on Twitter said, I recorded for 2 minutes and it was like this the entire time. This is not fast forwarded or edited in any way. And the guy who posted that video on Twitter says, Floridians who have lived through storms their entire lives are reporting to have never seen or witnessed anything like this. And I can definitively tell you from my own experience, it looks like the 4th of July during a thunderstorm at night in Florida. And it happens all the time, especially in the summer months and into hurricane season. At what point, Buzz, does Josh McCoon hit the Candace Taylor problem head on? What is it going to take?
Nothing will happen before the election, obviously. And I don't know that anything will happen because I don't know that she's, embarrassing the party over and over and over again. I don't know that you could get enough support. I mean, McCoon had a heck of a fight on his hands to get Brian Pritchett off, who had broke the law. So
found by a judge who voted illegally.
Yes, and it still was a tremendous fight. In the end, he was able to break through and get it done with plenty of support. But I don't know. I don't know that he'll be able to take it on head on. And Scott, you mentioned your experience in Florida. My dad grew up in Miami. I was born in Miami. My dad was there during Hurricane Donna in the 60s, which that was a Category 4 hurricane that direct hit on Miami and the Keys, an enormous hurricane that caused tremendous devastation. My dad lived through it. That was in the 60s. I just did a quick Google, the worst hurricanes in the United States. Unbelievable. 1992, Hurricane Andrew, tremendous hit
was going to
on
mention
southern Florida. Hurricane Diane, Hurricane Camille, it devastated Louisiana. You can go on and on and on in the 60s and 50s and 70s. The idea that Candace Taylor's unaware that there were bad hurricanes in the past and assumes that nobody alive today has ever seen anything. That's just demonstrably false. She hasn't taught. She thinks history began when she was born, and that's why only bad hurricanes happen now when they're after Donald Trump trying to steal the election from him. It's poppycock. It's poppycock. And
read
she's
two
full of it.
different statements. I want to read two different statements and get your take, because I know you have very strong feelings about Josh being involved with the Georgia Republican Assembly. I was made aware of a situation in Virginia in Loudoun County. Where you live now, not Loudoun County, but
I don't know. Yeah.
in Virginia. The Virginia Republican Party tweeted out this statement, which caught my attention for a reason I would like to explain here. I'm going to read part of this. The Republican Party of Virginia has been made aware of hateful and divisive comments made by a local county chair during a recent event in Northern Virginia. We strongly and unequivocally condemn these comments, which are in no way reflective of our values as a party. And it goes much further. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I want to contrast that with Josh McCoon's statement about the anti-Semitic comments made by Candace Taylor. The Georgia Republican Party has long been clear in its condemnation of anti-Semitism. Recently, a Republican Party chairperson of a Southeast Georgia congressional district, Candace Taylor, appeared on a program hosted by Stu Peters. The Anti-Defamation League describes Peters as a Florida-based anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist, radio show host, and self-proclaimed Christian nationalist. He also regularly promotes white supremacist beliefs on his show and social media, and he has engaged in Holocaust denial. During the program, Taylor affirmed anti-Semitic comments made by the program host. Candace Taylor does not speak for the Georgia Republican Party. The Georgia Republican Party firmly rejects the anti-Semitic comments and age-old canards expressed by Peters. Obviously, these comments do not represent the values of the Georgia Republican Party. Taylor has apologized. Pi, do you see what I see in the difference in those two statements?
I do, but I want to contextualize the RVP's RPD, their tweet. What the chair in question up in Loudoun County, which is hour and a half, hour 45 minutes north of me. He joked. It was a joke. What he said was, as a committee, I've dedicated our future in Loudoun County to the immigrant vote. I don't care about the white vote. I don't care about the Christian vote. All I care about is the migrant/immigrant community. So to contextualize it, like, he's being blasted by the Virginia Republican Party for saying he doesn't care about the white vote. But
a little additional context, though, is that in Loudoun County, just 3 or 4 years ago, that county party sent out a blatantly anti-Semitic mail piece that also had to be condemned. And officers within the Central Committee of the Virginia Republican Party had to be removed because of it. So there is a lot of backstory there. I didn't go into it for this, but I see a major difference in how the two organizations are handling their business.
100%. And it's the Georgia Republican Party, and the reason the Georgia Republican Party hasn't gotten rid of Candace Taylor or some of these other bad actors who are more interested in building their own brand than actually promoting conservative values is because they need them. I mean, Josh McCoon needs them if he wants to stay chair or be reelected as chair. That's why he's a completely different person than the Josh McCoon I used to know, who was a very thoughtful guy. That's the Republican Party these days. It's brought out the worst in people because its nominee for president brings out the worst in people. I mean, it's validation. The things he says, like, he's made comments similar to blood and soil. He talked about the quote unquote bad genes of migrants earlier this week. I mean, that's racist stuff, guys. And he's promoted conspiracy theories after conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. So it's validation for them to go and do the same. And Buzz, to your point, I remember Hurricane Andrew in 92, because we had the church I was going to at the time, Mount Zion Baptist Church in Jonesboro. We had a family who were quote essentially refugees from Andrew. They ended up moving up to Metro Atlanta.
Yeah.
And then in 95, I also remember Hurricane Opal, which came through the Metro Atlanta area, I believe, as a tropical storm.
Yep.
If not a hurricane. So I mean, like powerful hurricanes are and by the way, Opal came through later than Helene. I mean, and
Yes.
we didn't have early voting then or anything like that, but I mean, it was a late September, early October storm. It dissipated about this time of year in 1995, and maybe we didn't. Maybe we
just
didn't
quick
have
Google October 4th, 1995.
we didn't have the ability to Buzz to control storms then, though. So
Well, that's a shame. If only we had, we could have stopped it.
Yeah, it's gotta. Yeah, I'm not trying to skirt the question. It's just this is what you get when you have grifters in the conservative movement who are more interested in making money. They'll sell conspiracy theories about Ukraine. They'll sell conspiracy theories about the election. Look, the government, like I said, didn't do us any favors during COVID, or didn't do themselves any favors during COVID. But everything was a conspiracy theory about COVID too.
So Buzz, the podcast that Candace Taylor puts out, Jesus, Guns, Babies. I just read to you that the Republican Party condemned him and his comments, not Candace Taylor.
Stu Peters. Yep.
They condemned Stu Peters and his rhetoric, but not Candace Taylor. And last night, Pi sent us an article about the Jesus Guns Baby podcast, which sent me down a rabbit hole because I started looking for the actual podcast because I wanted to see what she said in her own words, unedited. And you can only find it on Rumble. And the search algorithm obviously does not like Candace Taylor because it was not easy for me to find. I had to really do some deep technical searching in order to find the most recent episode of the Jesus Guns Babies podcast where she said these things about the weather being manipulated. And what I noticed, and I hope I'm not conjecturing. If I am, somebody correct me out there listening. Tell me I'm wrong. But it's the Jesus Guns Babies podcast is hosted by Stu Peters. And it's on Stu Peters' channel. It's not even on Candace Taylor's, because when I went to find Candace Taylor's channel, it didn't have anything recent. But under the Stu Peters banner, there is her most recent podcast. And she was talking with a lady that I've gotten to know a little bit. Her name's Lucretia Hughes, big African-American woman who has her own podcast and ran against Terry England, got 12%, and she thought she was hot stuff when she got 12% in a primary against Terry England for State House years ago. And I got to know her after that because I told her, I was like, that was not a great campaign. She thought she was doing great. And I was on brand. I told her the truth. You got smoked, lady. Back to the original question though. If the party is condemning Stu Peters, how do you allow for Candace Taylor to remain on a platform that is sponsored by Stu Peters?
Well, you do it because you don't really care. She generates excitement and among a certain segment, and she gets votes. That's how she got elected, and she's one of these she fights, and all this stuff. But it's I think Jason hit it when he talked about how there's just the rise of these grifters that are very popular now, and she's right there with it. Guys, I'm racking my brain as you were talking, Scott. I seem to remember something about the Alabama cheerleader giving Candace Taylor heck and blasting what she called her boyfriend. And for some reason, and if I'm wrong about this, I'm sorry. I'll be happy to be corrected. But the boyfriend was Stu Peters. Am I misremembering that? I'm trying to search for it because of this latest thing,
I vaguely,
now
I
now
vaguely
Candace-
it's
remember
hard
that.
to find.
Candace Taylor and the Alabama cheerleader are singing from the same sheet of music.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything. In fairness to Debbie, I haven't seen anything for the Alabama cheerleaders talking about weather manipulation. But I have seen some things around her praising Josh McCoon and his work in the election, forcing the election board to make law when they're not elected, which is crazy. We'll get to that in a second. I've seen that from Debbie, and I've also seen Candace Taylor retweet that. So
Yeah.
I don't think that they're at odds anymore.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I see just things that pop up here. Candace Taylor talking to Stu Peters in 2021, in July of 2021, how she's going to ban COVID shots and masks as Georgia governor. So he's very excited about that. She's been on his show numerous times. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I probably shouldn't have said anything because it might be totally wrong. But
Just looking at Stu Peters' network on Rumble, and I'm not a member. I had to Google this. I've never. It's my first time here on Rumble. I mean, he hosts a number of shows, but I'm seeing, and I can't tell if Candace Taylor is one of these or not. But I can see here, like some of the titles of the shows. Fluorides, vaccines, murder is a stream accountability finally coming. Fluoride in water makes kids dumb. Like,
Jason, I'm seeing YouTube videos from 2 years ago. Stu Peters in meltdown mode. Debbie Dooley talking about this. How Stu Peters doesn't like to be criticized. Stu Peters doesn't like to be called out. This is on Debbie Dooley's YouTube channel. Stu Peters doesn't like to be called out for his hypocrisy. Other videos where she's blasting Stu Peters.
Yeah. So when I went and looked, if you'll click on the link in the Peach Pundit text thread, because I posted the link to her show, that specific episode where she's talking about weather manipulation with Lucretia Hughes.
Yeah.
I posted that as a link, and it's on the Stu Peters network.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, no. Just upon further review, yes, I had to click on one of the links. But yeah, you're right, Scott. It's here. It's here.
You've condemned Stu Peters, but you have somebody who is producing her content for his network.
Yeah. So this wasn't a one-time thing for Candace to just appear. She and Stu Peters, they
Yes,
have
he's
done
saying they have a
numerous
business
shows
relationship.
together. Yeah.
At least a business relationship.
So one of the other theories that's been, Stu Peters talks about this. He and Candace Taylor has said this, and I've seen this retweeted by dozens and dozens and dozens of longtime friends, people who I've had friendships with, people I've played baseball with, have retweeted this about the North Carolina lithium mine that BlackRock bought. And there was a tweet from some random person that got over 7 million views that said they're foreclosing on people's houses now and they're taking their property away from them so that BlackRock can have the entire thing to themselves.
Stu Peters is at the center of a lot of those conspiracy theories too, by the way.
So is the problem, Jason, the First Amendment? And we need to just do away with the First Amendment. I kid, but you can answer the question if you want.
No, it makes me, and I'll come back to your question in a second because I just want to know, one of my, years ago, when I was just out of high school and in my early 20s, I played in a punk rock band for 6.5 years, and one of my old bandmates lives in Asheville, and I texted him last week, see how they were doing, actually like the day after the storm. He responded, the road to their house was washed away. They were without power, or running water. And then I have both. You guys remember Brett Bittner?
Oh, yes.
Yep. Brett lives he lives in Tampa proper. And then one of my staffers at the Independent Center lives about 30 minutes north of him.
Wow.
So, I've been checking in on those guys, and Brett's been texting me updates on the weather as it progresses. So I have, friends and I had family, you guys, others who were in the line of Helene in Georgia. I was getting updates from them. So like, please stop. Just generally, please stop.
Yeah.
Because you're just an asshole if you keep doing this stuff and playing politics with tragedies. But to answer your question, Scott, as I've said before, the First Amendment, which guarantees the right to free speech, comes with freedom or liberty, whichever word you choose to use. Always comes some measure of excess. It is the price you pay for living in a free society. And the First Amendment is going to protect unpopular speech, things like conspiracy theories, hate speech, and so on. And there's very little we can do as a society to stop it, except for essentially making fun of these people and discouraging that behavior, or putting out the facts rather, which I think is probably better than making fun of those people because
Buzz, I'm going to talk to you about that for a second because making fun of them will only work if they feel shame. Right? It'll only if they're shameless, they're going to continue, won't they?
Well, the effect that it can have is it will expose them and it will make people realize, yeah, these guys are wrong. These people, this is misinformation. This is stupid. I don't believe that. That's so. No, Scott, you're right. It won't change it may not change their behavior until enough people say this is preposterous. I'm not listening to this person anymore. This person is not a trusted source. And I think that could happen much more quickly to a person like Candace Taylor, who frankly has a small following. I mean, we're talking about her because it's important because she has a high position in the Georgia Republican Party. Marjorie Taylor Greene eventually will suffer consequences for this. Perhaps 2 years from now, Lord willing, somebody with some guts and some backing and some common sense will run against her and beat her. So that they can have consequences to their actions. Guys like Stu Peters and other misinformation brokers, it's harder because they've built up a big following and they're kind of immune. They're immune to this stuff. But I think the effect that it has in laughing at them and shaming them is that others start to realize, wait a minute, this is misinformation.
Coming up next, the question, how did we get here? But before we start answering that question, I want to bring you a brief word from Robert Lee at Lee Media, who is asking you to visit the Golden Retriever Rescue of Atlanta, which is an all-volunteer, tax-deductible IRS 501c3 charitable organization. The GRRA is dedicated to providing veterinarian care, comprehensive evaluation, and foster and adoptive homes to golden and Labrador retrievers who are abandoned, mistreated, neglected, or left in shelters throughout Georgia. We encourage you to visit their website at GRRA and try to help connect people and dogs that need each other in their lives. You can truly make this world a better place for these golden-hearted pups. Thank you again to our friend, Robert Lee at Lee Media, for being a partner-level Patreon. You too can be a Patreon for just $5 a month. And I'll tell you, if you're at the $10 level, you missed out on the pre-roll on this show because we had some gold in there. And you're entitled to watch the entire thing live, unedited, which nobody else gets unless you're at the $10 or higher level. So go over to patreon.com/peachpundit, sign up for one of those tiers today, and we'll add you to the people who rock. So, Pi, how did we get here?
I've already touched on this some. I mean, you've had a breakdown, or we've had conspiracy theories. They've existed for, as long as time. You obviously had the conspiracy theories going back to the 60s of Kennedy's assassination and, multiple conspiracy theories related to that. We talked about 9/11, Obama's birth certificate. Those are all conspiracy theories that some have gained more traction than others. I think the Kennedy assassination conspiracy theories have gained a lot more traction than the 9/11 conspiracy theories, but the 9/11 conspiracy theories were grotesque. Obama's birth certificates were provably false. which Donald Trump, bought into and got embarrassed. While, SEAL Team 6 was killing bin Laden, Obama was roasting Trump over the birth certificate conspiracy theory. It's just been, I really attribute a lot of this to the breakdown of mental health in the pandemic. How significantly worse it's gotten. Because, like, you had believers in QAnon prior to the pandemic, but it didn't seem to have as big of a following as it did until the pandemic itself.
I mean, you had people willing to drive to D.C. to shoot up a pizza parlor.
Yeah, no.
Because of QAnon.
Yeah, Emily, Comet Ping Pong. Emily and I went and had lunch there one day just to say we had been there. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, this is something that has vexed me for a long time, trying to figure out an answer to this question, and I really wish I knew. I think, in some respects, like, let's talk about the Great Replacement theory, for example. Like, you have, because that Vivek Ramaswamy talked about that during a presidential debate. He brings it into the mainstream. It had lived mostly on racist, far right, white supremacist websites. But it has become, he brought it out in the debate, mainstreamed it. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to figure out why white population is declining. It's because white people don't have as many kids.
Weird, Nate. That is one of the themes of Idiocracy, is that the smart people realize it's too expensive to have kids, so they stop having babies, and only the stupid people have babies.
Yes, no, that's exactly it. And so like people stop having kids. I mean, our replacement rates, they need to be 2.1 per mother, per woman.
Couple.
Yep. And I think we're at 1.7 right now. I mean, like, and that's been a problem for the past 40 years. I mean, they've fluctuated. Some years they actually equaled out to 2.1, maybe a little bit higher. But, like, this has been a long-term problem. And, like, you look at the numbers and it's just like, okay, well, you have more kids. Have more fucking kids. Like,
that's easy for you to say.
Well, I mean, I didn't have any, and I only have a stepdaughter. My point, and Emily and I have ruled out the prospect of having kids, given that we're both 43
so it's
years
your
old.
fault. Okay, we got here because it's Pi's fault.
Well, and Emily only had one, so it's also her fault. But I mean,
she's got to replace herself. She's not going to replace you. That's
no. But I go back to what I said earlier, that there are far too many people who stand to benefit from this stuff, who have given a silent nod by their own rhetoric or the things they say online, Twitter, podcasts, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, that have given a subtle nod or wink that it's okay to say outrageous things that aren't true because I'm doing it.
Buzz, how did we get here?
Well, you guys wanted me to be hopeful earlier, and I let you down. But I do think it's important to remember that, as it says in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. And I
thought that was
will confess
Matthew.
here. Well, it might be quoted there too, but there's nothing new under the sun. I had a book when I was a young guy in the 80s. I was given a book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy. And it describes a global network of insiders that's determined to wield power over all mankind in the coming New World Order. Published in 1976, sold millions of copies. It's back in print. Okay.
Oh
so
my.
That was the 70s. You had that going on of a sort of a QAnon before there was QAnon. You go back to pre-World War II days. There was the America First Committee. Interesting name, right? What do we have now? We have a bunch of people out there talking about America First. They were anti-war. They were isolationists. Unfortunately, some of their leaders, including guys like Charles Lindbergh, very famous, the pilot John Lindbergh, many of them were controversial. They held anti-Semitic and pro-fascist views. Now, at least they were wise enough when Pearl Harbor happened to close up shop. But these things are not new. They flow through history. They cycle, and I think, unfortunately, we're at a time when they are popular again, and they have risen again, and they're spreading all over the place. Social media certainly helps and the internet certainly helps the spread of that, because these things can travel with lightning speed. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I think we're seeing this is the culmination of the hollowing out of so many institutions. People don't trust institutions, and frankly, there's good reason. Many of the leaders of these various institutions, whether it's media, whether it's universities, whether it's politicians, have let us down, have lied to us. And so I understand why people are skeptical and why people don't trust the quote unquote official narrative, but that doesn't mean you throw out everything, right? You have to retain common sense, and you have to not and certainly don't just rush out and believe people who are on Twitter and YouTube spouting off, right?
One of my favorite things is the prediction of the second coming, and you have all these predictions of the second coming. They seem to happen with more frequency than they used to these days. So there's an interesting.
Better get yourself ready, Jason.
But Jason, sorry to interrupt, Jason, but just to that point, you read the Bible, you read the book of all the apostles. Jesus said, "I'll be back soon." They all thought it's going to be any moment now.
And so did Paul. So did Paul.
Yes.
So I mean, Jesus even said. I mean, it's quoted multiple times in the Synoptic Gospels where Jesus said, "Sure, this generation will not pass away."
Yes.
So, but there's a good biblical scholar who I listen to, Bart Ehrman, who talks about as soon as he teaches at UNC. And as soon as like a couple of weeks of him teaching at UNC, he said that this local reporter called him and was asking, so is the world going to end next week? And he's like, what are you talking about? And like he wasn't raised in the Bible Belt. He got his theological degree from Princeton. So like he's just like, well, what are you talking about? Yeah, well, I wouldn't say Bart Ehrman is a Republican. But like there was a guy by the name of Harold, I think it was Harold Edgar Wisden, who he wrote a book in 1988, 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Could Be in 1988. Then he was proven wrong, and then he realized that he said he made an error and re-released the book. He revised his prediction date to 1989. And like you can go through this Wikipedia article. It's a list of dates predicted for apocalyptic events, and it's not just about the second coming of Jesus. You have some from Louis Farrakhan. You have some from other people as well, who predicted the apocalypse in some way, either religious or science, or pseudoscience.
So you said a moment ago, Buzz, the hollowing out of our institutions and people don't trust them. And you mentioned the media briefly, but I want to expound on that because for the 15 minutes before I came on the podcast, I wrote down all the examples I could think of in 15 minutes of when the media was just flat out wrong or scandalous. And I'm going to read through these quickly. Jason Blair scandal in 2003, New York Times reporter who plagiarized the heck out of everything. In 1992, NBC wired a GM truck to explode and then showed footage of a low speed impact, and it blew up. They had to settle with GM over that. Richard Jewell in the 1996 Olympics.
Yes.
Nicholas Sandman and the Covington Catholic High School incident from 2019.
Mm-hmm.
The Balloon Boy incident, if you recall that hoax that the media went crazy over. The weatherman who acted like he was being blown over while two frat boys walked behind him casually with their hands in their pocket. The Atlantic's headline, Georgia's experiment in human sacrifice when Brian Kemp decided to reopen. Hunter's laptop. Dan Rather's
National Guard hit on National Guard hit on
where he published unverified, which turned out to be forged documents. CNN recently put election deniers on the air to say that Al Gore won the 2000 election and that Donald Trump would try to steal it in the same way if Harris wins. The Duke lacrosse case. Brian Williams wants you to know he was there.
Yes.
Rolling Stone, University of Virginia rape case.
Yeah.
Then there's COVID and the all the stuff with COVID, the media just got it
Yeah, I
wrong.
mean, Dr. Fauci, right? Intentionally misled
Misleading
people on
us.
certain things because he didn't think we could handle it. So,
Right. And that the media said the vaccine was years away when in fact it was months away. Then they were saying that before the election. Donald Trump was saying, "Hey, we're going to have a vaccine," and the media was telling everybody there's no way, and they were trying to discredit him ahead of the election. The vaccine came out shortly after the election. But here's a really big one. Fox News was forced to pay Dominion $787 million in a settlement with Dominion. And here's the real thing, right? And if you're a MAGA person and you've lasted this long, you're a conspiracy theorist and you've lasted this long, which God bless you if you did, because we're making fun of you, and we're talking about how you're really a scourge to our society. But they said Tucker Carlson thought that Sidney Powell was a nut job, and he put her on the air anyway.
Yeah.
And he did it to feed your need for outrage.
Yep.
Because he absolutely wrote down in an email that came out during that court case that he thought Sidney Powell was a liar. And he's presented the stolen election case to this day, continues to present it as a real thing. Mm-hmm. And these are the people who continue to feed the conspiracy stuff. So how did we get here? Yes, our institutions need to do better. I mean, that was just what I could think of in 15 minutes. I've been in the room when a news story has been reported and it didn't happen the way I saw it with my own eyes. Mm-hmm. So the media has a major credibility gap with the American people. They're not trustworthy. They get it wrong regularly, and there's no accountability when they get it wrong. Somebody might lose their job, like Jason Blair lost his job. Congratulations to one dude, right? But this happens with such regularity that it's impossible for people to not retreat into areas or to news sources that feed their bias. And if you have a Stu Peters out there who's filling the gap, and he's scratching an itch for people who are being taught by our institutions to not trust them, this is where I think this is how we got here. It's and it's not just the media, it's the government too. It's the parties, how the way that Trump handled the immigration issue when Joe Biden had a deal on the table, calling legislators to tell them to walk away from it because it'll hurt my reelection campaign if they fix it now. These are the types of things. The government has to be better. Parties as institutions have to be better. The media must be way better than they are right now. And I say that as somebody who's talking into a microphone. Yeah, the best thing I can do for you is tell you that anything that you've heard or said that you've heard me say, or anybody on this podcast, or any of the things you read at Peach Pundit, verify for yourself. We do not hide our bias. We are biased. The media doesn't tell you that, but it sure feels that way at times.
Mm-hmm.
Pi?
I was just going to say, we've always had some form of media bias in the early days of the country. There were Federalist newspapers, there were Democratic Republican newspapers, the ones who backed Adams in the election of 1800, the ones who backed Jefferson in 1800. There were things. The Reason put out a funny ad several years ago. If the election of 1800 had been televised, like they put up these fake campaign ads. And
brilliant.
They called John Adams hermaphroditical and said that Jefferson was like the spawn of Satan. Children riding pike.
Yes.
But that was that was 224 years ago.
Right.
Information, as Scott said, something fake, false, whatever, can catch wildfire in a matter of minutes. All it takes is the right person to tweet it out. So I think Neil Bortz, who I've lost a lot of respect for over the years, but used to listen to his show a lot when I was in my 20s and early 30s. Bortz used to talk about, like, don't take anything I say at face value. Like, go and research it for yourself.
Yep.
And that's something, whether it's something you hear on this podcast, whether it's something we write about at Peach Pundit or on Twitter, or I have several different outlets where I write things, both my day jobs and then Exile Policy. Fact check us. Tell us tell us if we're wrong. But bring the facts. Don't bring us opinion disguised as facts. Cite sources.
Buzz, wave your magic wand and tell me how we're getting out of this.
Well, I'll go back to a book that y'all have heard me talk about on the podcast, The Fourth Turning, and there's no doubt that we're in the middle of a fourth turning, and that describes an unraveling that causes a crisis. And I think you can, it doesn't take a religious prophet to look around the world and look at the future and say we're headed to a really bad place. That there's a lot of things happening right now in the United States and across the world that could end very badly for millions and millions of people across the world. It absolutely could. But as history has shown, after those crises, those fourth turnings, there's a restoration, and people wake up, and people recommit themselves to principles that saw us through dark times in history in the past. And so I think that's going to happen. I think you can see some of that beginning to happen. The fact that I imagine when this podcast goes out, we will hear from people, from listeners, who will say thank you for saying the things that we said and how they don't buy into this stuff. I think we'll see people begin to turn away from this stuff. I think, unfortunately, this probably has to get worse before it gets better, and then it will get better. So I think, history has shown us that we go through these times and we recover from them, and we remember who we used to be, and we remember the things that are really important in life, and we go back to those things. And I think that will happen again.
We'll leave us with the tweet of the week. Peach Pundit tweet of the week, something we started a few weeks ago. It comes to us from Alex Cohen. I don't know who really Alex Cohen is, but I found this tweet to be fascinating. Waffle House has a storm center with an entire operations team that is so good at their job, they assist FEMA during hurricanes. The European mind cannot comprehend this. My last closing thought. I am suing the state election board. My organization I'm working for I'm named as a plaintiff separately, along with the organization I work for. And there is a small group of people who've let me know that they're not happy with me over that. And have people who I've called friend for a long time telling me that I'm a sellout. And I'm going to tell you point blank, I'm not the one who sold out.
Right.
This lawsuit is about constitutional principles of separation of powers. I'm still the same guy I was 5 years ago. And if I was in the legislature, I would be making a big stink about how this unelected body was making law when I was elected to do that job. If you doubt that, you don't really know me, and we were never really friends. If you think that I'm the one who sold out when you are the ones who are willing to forego the Constitution and the concept of separation of powers, and that all lawmaking belongs to the legislative branch, I'm going to ask you to do some soul searching and ask yourself if you're the one who sold out here. And I'm going to ask you to repent and come back, because I didn't change, and I'm not doing this for money. I'm not making a single penny. My salary has not changed. I'm not getting a bonus. There's nothing financially in this for me. It's actually really hard to do this. And it is never the right thing to do if you do it the wrong way. And with that, thank you for listening. I am Scott Turner. Been joined tonight, my co-host, then Jason Pye, the irreplaceable Jason Pye, the effervescent Buzz Brockway. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, follow Pye at PYE, follow Buzz at Buzz Brockway or Boston Rockway, and me, Scott23. Scott was with 1T. And make sure you go on over to Patreon and join the people who rock. Go to patreon.com/peachpundit. Sign up for one of our tiers today. We'll add you to this list of people who do this for us already and help us keep this thing running. And that is Bill Werkheiser, Tony West, AFP, Ari Schaefer, Benjamin Hurst, Bo Brennan, Colin Martin, Jeff Cobble, Hank Burnham, James Hall, John Vestal, Mike Buchert, Reed Powell, Robert Lee at Lee6 Media, Ron Daniels, Ryan Purvis, Sam Thomas, Shannon Ferguson, Stuart Wilkinson, and our anonymous contributor. If you two would like to be anonymous, you don't have to say your name. We'd still take your money, but we really appreciate you. Thanks again for listening. I do feel better, Buzz. I do feel better. You're
Good.
You know, the part about it getting worse before it gets better is not great, but getting better is good. And we'll catch you all next time.